Welcome into the latest episode of the Need for Seeds College Basketball Podcast, presented by the Betting the Pitch Podcast Network. I'm your host, the real underscore G Warner, with my co-host at Big East Ben. Today we're going through the West Regional. Since there are no play-in games, we can go through fully in depth, give you a look into our process for the first round games, plus give you an idea of who we expect to advance and potentially a dark horse from this region. At Big East Ben, how's your day been? How much have you done on this West region?
I've done a lot of work, despite it's been tough. I'm speaking personally. I'm getting a hit from all ends at the job that pays me, and people are quitting.
Ooh.
And it's a perfect storm, but I'm persevering.
Great. And we're going to persevere.
Smooth seas never made a good captain, as they say.
Got it. As all those people say it. Not sure I've ever heard that before. We'll start in the beautiful one seed matchup, I guess. Since that's or is there anything you want to kind of lay out there about the West before we get into a game by game and then eventually look at the macro for the region?
Yeah, it's a tough region. I think me and you and the rest of America agree that North Carolina is the weakest one seed. In terms of the 2 seed
I don't know what
Arizona.
you're talking about.
I think me and you agree, and the rest of the media agree. North Carolina is the weakest one seed, and then we have the 2 seed Arizona that both me and you hate and don't think they're winning 5 games or 4 games, and then you got Baylor who's shaky and Alabama who's shaky. It's the region of inconsistency, I will say.
Yeah, inconsistent or just not very good, which does make it really hard to pick, though, is my concern, is that I feel like if there's a region out there that doesn't have strength at the top, it is this one. And I think that opens the field up for a lot of potentially unheralded teams. But sadly, I just don't think there are a lot of the lower seeded teams that really interest me too much. But we'll get into that a little bit more in depth. We'll start with the North Carolina. I guess they do have a playing game here with the winner of Howard versus Wagner. But it looks like DraftKings is actually like happy enough to throw out numbers because I think they were dealing UNC just recently a 24.5 point favorite against unknown opponents. So not a lot of concern for them, I don't think, about the difference between Howard and Wagner.
Yeah, the only thing I know about Howard is that Gus Johnson went there, and then
Yeah, but
per
he also
Gus
went to
John,
15 schools, so I don't even know if he can claim it.
yeah, that's true. That Harvard documentary, and then per Harvard Howard alum Gus Johnson, he said that Kamala Harris would be attending this game if they make it through the plan,
Wow.
which I find interesting
She has
because
nothing else to do, apparently.
Kamala Harris has basically been Kate Middleton, unless you except you stretch it into a period of 3.5 years.
Well, I feel like Meghan
Um,
Markle would be a more appropriate comparison, but I'll let that slide.
nah, dude, you're off in pop culture. It's the Kate Middleton reference is on point. Meghan Markle can't get enough of the spotlight. Um, Only thing I know about Wagner is obviously the Hurley brothers were there, and then before that, I actually saw Wagner in the NCAA tournament back in 2003 when I was a little sixth grader. They were a 15 seed. They played number 2 Pittsburgh, lost by like 30, and their coach was the point guard on the NC State team who threw the alley oop on the dunk, and then Jim Valvano ran out on the court. And
You
he
mean the
always
shot.
contends.
You mean shot the air ball.
Well, he has stuck to this day, contending that it was a pass,
Do you know
and
who?
I didn't really
Are you
respect that.
quizzing me? Is this like a trivia time to know who this guy is?
I don't remember his name. I just remember he's a point guard at NC State team, and he always said that was an intentional pass.
Pretty sure it's
Because a lot of
Terry
times,
Gannon. I think it was Terry Gannon, a broadcaster in college
okay,
basketball now. We've already said enough. The last thing we'll say about this game, because we're both picking North Carolina. What is the mascot for Wagner?
Peacock, Eagles, Seagulls.
Close. You had a lot of
Seagulls,
things that are all going the right
Gulls,
directions, but you had half words. The Seahawks, Wagner Seahawks. Uh,
Seahawks.
I don't think
All
it really
right.
matter who's gonna get through this one, but we'll move next to 8 and 9 seed, and we have Michigan State, and they are one of the most overseeded teams, not called Florida Atlantic or maybe even North Carolina. And Michigan State somehow, even despite being very overseeded with that 10-15 quad one record, apparently, amazing that 25 of their 30 something games were against quad one, but it looks like Michigan State opened a 1.5 point favorite. That's fallen to one. Total at 129 has climbed to 130 half and a half. So we got Michigan State at 1 point favorite with a total 130 and a half points.
So Mississippi State has this vaunted defense. The defense is predicated on limiting teams' 3-point shooting. They're one of the best teams at defending the arc. Their 2-point defense is much less efficient. They're actually allowing teams one of the highest field goal percentage on shots at the rim. Michigan State found out very early on in the season that they are not a good 3-point shooting team. And they've actually abided by that. They don't shoot a ton of threes. It was very different than when that game against Duke in the Champions Classic when they were just jacking and bricking.
Mm.
So I think Michigan State knows what they are and they can adapt to find weaknesses in that Mississippi State defense. Michigan State's also very good at limiting shots at the rim themselves. And Mississippi State is not a good 3-point shooting team. Under 35% on the season, plus 200 on KenPom.
200th
I'll
or
take the
higher.
veteran
200
Tyson Walker.
ranked 200th or worse, you're saying.
Bad 3-point shooting team. With everyone ripping on Michigan State this year for being overrated, and it's completely justified, they still have Tyson Walker. He proved his mettle in March last year. Great point guard. I'll take him over the freshman Hubbard on Mississippi State. And again, it's Rothstein says January, February, March, or sorry, January, February, Izzo, April for a reason. Michigan State is great in this position. I mean, I have some really bad memories from them, when they're in this middling seed, obviously last year as the 7th seed knocking out Marquette with Joey Hauser getting his vengeance. And then back in 2008, Marquette played Michigan State in an 8-9 game.
Tom Crean, I remember.
Take a guess as to when Michigan State when Marquette scored their first point in the first half.
I don't know, but I bet Marquette that game because I remember sitting in a wing bar in Austin and thinking, oh my God, this is my nightmare.
It was the 10-minute, 15 mark of the first half they got on the
Ooh.
scoreboard. So I have very bad memories of Michigan State, especially in this position. I'll go with Izzo winning this game and covering the narrow spread.
Well, it is his month, and the nice part also is that Marquette, if they see Michigan State, it'll be in the finals. I will agree. I will take Michigan State. I think Hubbard. I can't believe you're sliding the Mississippi Mr. Basketball, but I think I would slide him too. I think Mississippi State is probably going to be a fairly unchosen, or I don't think a lot of people are going to take Mississippi State in this one, which makes me think the Michigan State number will climb. So it's a little bit interesting that it's been falling back towards Pick'em. But I think it just means less points to lay if you're backing Michigan State. So I will join you on that one. Next, we'll move to a good, I guess, 5-12 matchup potentially with the Lopes, who I know you've been following pretty closely amongst your falling in love with West Coast basketball now that you actually stay out past 9 p.m. local time in the Pacific or Mountain time zones. St. Mary's takes on Grand Canyon. And if I could find this number, I will shout it out. So it looks like it opened
5.5.
It looks like it opened St. Mary's 5-point favorite, total 131. It has climbed to 132.5, though it's very juiced to under, and we got 5.5, as you said.
So we all know the story in St. Mary's, second best defensive team in the country in terms of per game. They really defend the interior. Saxon is an absolute beast. Also great at crashing the boards. One of the top offensive rebounding teams in the country. They don't shoot a ton of threes, but they got some snipers. Alec Dukas, that kid is awesome. He totally saved me in that first half cover against Santa Clara in the tournament there.
Yeah.
Um, Bad foul shooting team, which is kind of weird, judging by their amount of white guys.
Oh,
But Grand Canyon is kind of a similar team. So the big difference is they live at the stripe. They're number 5 in the country and point distribution skewed towards free throws. Decent foul shooting team as well. They shoot, 72%. They do give up a lot of shots in the interior. Like they run their teams off the 3-point line, but they're actually very good at defending the interior. They have one of the best defensive field goal percentages against teams that shoot at the rim. Given that I think these teams will limit what each other does best in offense, and given that, I think the, lethargic, slow tempo of St. Mary's will cancel out that Grand Canyon, they're not track stars, but they play at a pretty high tempo. I like the under in this game, under 132.5.
yeah. I think that's the reasonable way to go with this one. I wonder about St. Mary's and how they adapt to missing Josh Jefferson, who seemed to me like their most athletic player. Um,
Yep.
he doesn't fit your white guy from like Australia or New Zealand type of category. But Jefferson's done for the year with having a knee injury and then surgery on it. I think that ended his season. I do wonder if that will limit the trajectory of St. Mary's, though. They're going to try to grind this game out, as you said. I think under makes sense. I'm just not sure I believe in Grand Canyon. They're, to me, I mean, this is a big step up in competition, obviously. Plus, they're not going to have their gigantic home crowd playing in Spokane. I mean, maybe there's a decent amount of traveling fans from Grand Canyon. I don't know necessarily that Spokane, Washington is going to be a very difficult environment for either of these teams, but I just feel like this is one of those big type of underdog picks that is a little bit popular. But I think St. Mary's is more than capable of getting this done, grinding out a result here and getting a victory. And then if they win, I feel like covering 5.5 is not a guarantee. But that is something that's not that big of a number for a 12 versus a 5. So I will go with the side here and play St. Mary's minus 5.5. We'll next move to Alabama and Charleston. This will be in the same region. And we'll start with, looks like it opened Alabama 10-point favorite. That's down to 9.5. Total is 172.5, climbed all the way to 174. So I think we like points in this one.
We like points. We like points. So these teams are literally the Spider-Man meme, pointing at each other. One team is just pretty significantly better at doing it than the other. I think you can guess which one of these is.
Charleston.
0 for 1. One big difference in this is that, again, both teams like to run. Alabama actually has pretty good transition defense. They're the number 8 team in this tournament in terms of transition field goal percentage. Charleston, on the other hand, 62%, or number 62 in this field at transition defense. They're also pretty weak at, defending the interior. Alabama, while they're fast, they do have some pretty athletic bigs that I think that can get inside there. This Charleston team isn't anything like the team last year. I mean, that team last year was about 20 points higher in KenPom. They gave San Diego State a good run last year, but this is a worse Charleston team. The closest thing they're going to see, the closest thing they saw this year that bears resemblance to Alabama offense is FAU. They lost by 16. So I have a lot of confidence in Alabama covering this number.
I'll take over. I think College of Charleston, what I've seen with Pat Kelsey, their head coach, is that it literally doesn't matter how the game's going. If they are getting destroyed and taking really bad shots and running really quickly, they will still continue to do so. I think that's a really bad idea. I think I probably would lean to Alabama as a favorite here as well. But as we get a little bit past the free throw range, I just think we're going to see a ton of points because I don't think either of these teams slows down. It does feel gigantic to play an over 174 in the NCAA tournament. But here we are, and here I am, and I think it's going to be a good one for point scorers. So I will be looking towards this through my player points pool.
What do you think about Pat Kelsey?
I'm not a huge fan. At least when I bet on him in the past, I don't think I've done very well betting against him. But I felt like he had always had the best team in his conference when he was at Winthrop, and that didn't seem to get to the tournament enough. And I feel like he had a really great year last year, which seemed to be smoke and mirrors. I don't know necessarily because he kind of took over for Earl Grant, I think, who went to Boston College, and they had a good team that covered a lot of spreads. So I don't know how much he did to build on what they had already in place there. He certainly took it to new heights last season, but this one, I'm not sure necessarily what it will look like. And honestly, I feel like if he had Alabama's talent, he probably could do pretty well. But I don't know if he'll really get too far from Charleston.
I think he's a tool with
Oh,
his stupid arm sleeve poking out through his golf shirt. Totally screwed over UMass
ah,
by uh, not taking the job 15 minutes before the press conference to announce him as head coach to return to Winthrop. Um, he looks like the type of guy Nate Oates would call to maybe get rid of a murder weapon if I had to make a tie it back to this game.
got it. Maybe he didn't want to go to the MAC. Well, we'll move on to Clemson and New Mexico, 6 versus 11 seed. It looks like New Mexico opened a 2.5 point favorite. That's down to two. Total at 150 and a half at open has climbed to 151. All lines quoted courtesy of BetOnline, Sportsbetting.ag. If you're not a member there, check out the links in the podcast description to get free money at the casinos. So, New Mexico 2 point favorites, 11 seed. What does that say to you?
I mean, this is a battle between probably one of the most overseeded teams in this bracket and one of the most underseeded teams in this bracket. New Mexico was the victim to the. I mean, again, it wasn't as egregious as the Big East because all their teams got in, but in terms of seeding, the Mountain West was very disrespected. I actually liked this Clemson team early on a lot. I thought they were very good in non-conference and early ACC play, but ever since that win over North Carolina in Chapel Hill, they haven't really done much. We know the story of Clemson. You got the 1-2 combo of PJ Hall, Joe Girard, and then Hunter is the third one.
Yeah, I would prefer Hunter to Gerard, but I
Yeah.
guess I'll let you stick with the white boy theme.
They make their free throws. They're good at defending the interior. Uh, they are kind of slow. They can't really defend well in transition. Who are they facing? New Mexico, the second fastest team in the country. Or maybe in this tournament. I don't know, or whatever. Second
They're
fastest team.
fast. They
They're
play
fast.
fast.
Get a ton of points in transition. They don't turn the ball over. Here's my thinking. Hall is slow. Joe Girard is slow. Eddie House's kid is fast. Jamal Mashburn Jr. is fast. New Mexico is a superior backcourt. Give me the Wolfpack in this one.
They're not the Wolfpack. They're the Lobos.
Give me
They're
the
the
Lobos.
Spanish version of Wolf. I was looking at to potentially bet this one because I was worried it was going to climb above that 3 point number. It's then kind of shrunk today. I think I saw this fall from 2.5 last night to 1.5, recording this Monday, March 18th, in the year of our Lord 2024. I feel like when I looked at kind of handicap in this game, it felt like New Mexico. I mean, looking at their stats, to me, they're still ugly. I feel like they have a lot of talented players, but they play at a pace that makes their game really, really inconsistent. It can go really well for even within games. I feel like they have stretches of it going very well, going badly, going very well, going badly. It's like almost each TV timeout, you never know what you're going to get. That worries me for backing a favorite here against I think a steady Clemson team. Clemson to me have always been an underpriced team under Brad Brownell, especially at home, and a lot of the times with PJ Hall as well. They've won games as small favorites at home a lot, but they've also really struggled away from home. It's a little bit of a weird environment. Not sure what to expect in Memphis for this matchup. I don't know necessarily that the crowd's going to be pushing any sort of direction necessarily. The other matchup there is Colgate and Baylor, and I don't expect that to be a huge crowd either in that early session, especially after seeing maybe 20 fans in Kansas City from Baylor last weekend or last week. I feel like I'm picking New Mexico -2 here. I don't know that I feel great about laying points with an 11 seed versus a 6. The seeds don't really matter, but I do think they tell a little bit of a tale. And I feel like New Mexico will win this game. I don't really necessarily feel like they're going to win by 1 point, so that's why I'm laying off the 2. I just, when I look at the stats, and I think Clemson's going to slow this game down and make it really hard on New Mexico to get to their pace. I think New Mexico is going to do everything they can to not let that happen, but then I feel like that probably means they push the pace more than I'd feel comfortable with laying 2 points favorite. I will pick it for this podcast since we were picking each game.
You really you really zagged there, man.
Did
Never
I?
let them know what you're going to do next. You were just praising Clemson, 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 and then you just
I gotta, I got. Thank you for saying that. You zip them up. I gotta have everyone never know where I'm going, just in case, especially because this one clearly has been making me do backflips in my mind. We'll move next to the 14 seed Colgate. Somehow I feel like I was looking at their championship game and they were down like 15 points with little time remaining. Somehow they ended up winning and getting their automatic bid for I think the third straight season. They are taking on the Baylor Bears, a 14 seed versus a 3 seed. 3 seed Baylor opened 13.5 point favorites. It's climbed to 14. Total initially 138 is climbed up to 139.
So I know you're very high on Colgate last year. I think you put a couple mortgage payments on them against your alma mater.
How'd
Didn't
that
go
go?
didn't go well. I believe they lost by 20 as probably what, like 14-point dogs in
Yeah,
that.
they're getting back into it at the end, if I remember correctly, but never got back into it enough.
So similar line this year against Baylor, similar Texas team. This Colgate team is not the Colgate team of last year. They give up a ton of points in transition. They don't get the foul line at all, and when they get to the foul line, they don't make them. Um, Last year they shot 40% from three, had the 43rd best offense. Like we said, they lost to Texas by 20. Those offensive metrics are a lot worse. I think Baylor will eat them alive in the half court. This kind of slower, more disciplined Baylor team. They'll get at the rim with their bigs. The defense of Colgate is actually not really that bad. They do a great job of limiting teams' 3-point shooting. Maybe if they had a similar offense as they did last year, I take them. But not this year. Offense isn't good enough to keep up with Baylor. I think Baylor covers this number.
Yeah, so my dilemma, I mean, Colgate, you're right. I've been backing them for a couple of years now. I think the collapse and near non-cover, despite being up 24 points at Syracuse to start the season, really tipped the scales and pushed me away from them, especially after that close to the season against a Texas team that I thought was just really average and didn't have a lot of great players. This now fast forward to Baylor, who has two NBA draft picks. I think I heard somebody say that the this is the worst draft class in NBA history, which is saying something. But Baylor's got two of those players, at least one that's going lottery, and I think Yves Misi might find his way into that as well. Their center,
Anthony Bennett
alongside.
might have something to say about that.
Well, he was a 1 seed or a first overall pick. I think it's just like top to bottom the talent here because it's a lot of big guys that have stayed in college for 5 years because they couldn't ever leave to get drafted. I'm looking at you, Hunter Dickinson. So I don't really know what to do with this one. I gotta say, I don't. I would imagine that Colgate is going to try, as you said, to run Baylor off the 3-point line. Baylor's one of the best 3-point shooting teams out there. And Colgate just doesn't really have they had like a borderline pro in the backcourt. Pretty much Nelly Cummings was really good. Then before that, they had another name that is escaping me, that Jordan Burns, I want to say, that dropped 30, I think, in a first round NCAA tournament game, which I think they won, upset Kansas State maybe a few years ago. But regardless, it just feels like this is it's going to be a tough game. I think Colgate's going to try to slow the pace and keep this as low scoring as possible. They do have talented inside scorers like Keegan Records, a Rhode Island guy like myself. But the problem is, I don't know that he's going to do a great job of scoring over Yves Misi, though he's certainly got probably 15 years more of playing basketball experience than Yves has. But I don't know necessarily where I feel like Colgate can get in a good groove here. I don't really know if I trust the Baylor offense, excuse me, the Baylor defense at all because they seem to want to play a zone until they can't defend in it. They did that against Kansas, switched out of it, and then ended up going on a big run to win at home. I watched them do it against Iowa State. They eventually switched to man, and I just felt like that happened against Cincinnati as well. So I don't really know what to do this one at all. And with that kind of all in that direction, I'll play for this game to be a little bit more close than I think anyone would expect, and I'll go under 139 points because I just feel like that it's going to take a lot to get over that type of total if Colgate gets the pace they want, or if they get blown out. I think that's also problematic for that number as well. Got anything else you want to say on that one before we move on to the next game?
Let's move on.
Let's move on to Dayton and Nevada, which the 7 seed Dayton. They are. I'm not really sure how they got in this tournament. A little bit. I mean, I don't know about you. Taking on the 10 seed Nevada, who seemed very it felt like everyone considered them a lock when their conference was barely getting 2 teams into the first 4. And then to me, didn't seem like Nevada deserved that much safety, but it ended up coming true, I guess, to a certain extent, even though they're 10 seed. Nevada opened a 1-point favorite with a total of 137.5 points. And we still have Nevada a 1-point favorite, but the total's down to 136.5. What do you got on this one?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head with Dayton. I mean, they just kind of quit the last 35% of the season. Some really bad losses. They are extremely thin. They don't have any depth. They basically play 6 guys. I was watching their Loyola game, and one of their guards got in trouble, and they were having Deron Holmes handle the ball, and I'm just like, and he's no Oso Ighodaro.
Easy now. I will not stand for any Deron Holmes slander in this on this Need for Seeds college basketball podcast. That's something they've done all season. So he's a point forward and will play point guard. That is not a. I mean, granted, I didn't start watching until after their starting point guard tore his ACL on the first game of the season, but that's a normal strategy for them.
I don't like it. So
Okay.
Holmes is legit though. One of the best players in the country, probably an All-American. Kobe Brea is an absolute sharpshooter from 3. He's shooting like 49%. I think it's the best of any player in the tournament.
Not named
Nevada,
Reed, not named Reed Shepard.
No, I don't think Reed Shepard's that high.
Cold streak. Go ahead.
Yeah. Nevada's game plan is pretty simple. It's get to the stripe. It's work it in the half court. Similar to Dayton. I mean, the question is, can Nevada get Dayton in foul trouble? Because Nevada is very good at racking up fouls on teams. Dayton is thin, but they're disciplined. They don't commit a lot of fouls. They know they're thin. Holmes is the best player on the court. I think if Dayton's 3-point shooting shows up, it's over for Nevada. I did not think I would back Dayton coming into this tournament, but judging by the matchup, I'll take them as 1.5-point dogs here.
Yeah. So good point. Sorry, 1.5. I read it wrong. It is 1.5 at Bet Online, Sportsbetting.ag. So I'll correct you. Reed Shepard 52.5% from 3.
52.
Kobe Brea 49.2, which is, I mean, both 49.2 is insanity, especially on 90.
Can I say he was the second best 3-point shooter in the tournament?
I don't know. Maybe he did. I'll give you that. Even I don't want to rewind the tape because I don't have that real capability at this point. But so I'm looking at Dayton. I'm a little bit concerned about them playing in Salt Lake City and fighting that altitude for potentially a high-paced and emotional type of tournament game. But there is the benefit of longer timeouts to get all those same over and over and over Coca-Cola Zero, whatever they are, commercials, Capital One. Seeing Chuck just literally buy into just calling himself an idiot in every commercial he acts in, and Samuel L. Jackson trying to be like a cool guy. I'm really not forward to that.
Jennifer Gardner somehow weaseled her way into those commercials. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, but she was original Capital One. So that makes sense, actually. They had an existing relationship.
I think she had a long-standing contract, probably, and then the whole Ben Affleck situation might have helped or hurt. I'm not sure necessarily. But what I think Dayton will do is play this game slowly. I don't think Nevada, I mean, Steve Alford in the past days at New Mexico and at UCLA used to push the pace a lot, but I don't really think that he does that as much with his Nevada team. So I'm with you. I think that Dayton has the best player on the floor. I also don't really believe that Nevada is that strong or talented, and felt like a lot of their wins, shocker, came on their home floor in the Mountain West. And I don't know necessarily that there's a lot more to say about it. I mean, losses to Drake on a neutral, I guess a win over TCU on a neutral, but that's like an 8 seed. So like, or 9 seed. So like, I don't really know what to say about. I guess I get the committee not really trusting the Mountain West because it seemed like all their wins were piled up on home court, but I don't want to offend my co-host Mountain West Ben on Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, everything. So at this point, I'm going with Dayton. I'll take them a 1.5 point underdog as well. And I feel like I'll probably bet that if we stay with Dayton as an underdog, because I think they have the best player on the floor. And sometimes it is that simple. Last matchup we'll get to before we'll do a little macro talk and then get into best bets, end of show. We'll go with Arizona hosting, or I guess not hosting, but facing Long Beach State in Salt Lake City. And Dan Munson, I think it come up on this podcast earlier in the season how he got part of his contract. He got a part of the buy game revenue generated when he would basically take his team on a country tour, barnstorming across all the biggest names across college basketball to make as much money as possible to get his kids braces. Well, he got fired, or they just, I think it was maybe a little bit more of a school, new administration, new athletic director's decision to remove him from his position and just kind of end the relationship because it wasn't really going anywhere. And Long Beach State hadn't had much success. Well, then they won the Big West title. And now they have a fired coach who's now taking them to the NCAA tournament. And I don't think there's any takebacks. So, do you think that Long Beach can make a big, deep run to the NCAA title game and get their coach the true respect he deserves before he moves on to coach somewhere lower tier than Long Beach State, like I don't know, Cal State Northridge?
The premier Big West program, CSUN. Um, Hey, listen, I like Long Beach State a lot. I bet them a lot in non-conference play.
DePaul,
DePaul, yep. Yeah, they have a few good non-conference wins.
Minnesota.
They beat Michigan, they beat
Oh,
DePaul,
hmm,
um,
Michigan.
they beat USC in overtime.
So they got two coaches fired, and we'll see about Andy Enfield.
Yeah, we'll see. I think Enfield's coming back with that recruiting class, I believe.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think that he should be in jeopardy, but that was a pretty disgusting performance from the USC Trojans with a very talented team, and I can't really explain how that happened.
yeah, I mean he's a healthcare guy, he's not a basketball coach. What do you expect?
Yeah, healthcare that takes his wife on a first date to Taco Bell. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So so Long Beach State obviously doesn't get intimidated by the name in the name and tradition, the name on the front of the jersey and the tradition and pedigree that comes with it, with beating the likes of USC, Michigan, and of course the Paul.
Chris Holtman's new home.
Yeah, I watched a press conference today. It was really awkward. Um,
Did he say yes to this job while getting hair replacement surgery like he did the Ohio State one, and he's still groggy from his anesthesia? Because that happened.
that happened.
Yes, he was getting hair implants or something like that, and the doc woke him up and he took the call and said, "Sure, I'll take the job."
You know, Joe Buck almost lost his voice because of botched hair transplant surgery.
I'm not shocked that hair's fake. I do know that he drinks like hot tea the whole time and sweats the whole Monday Night Football game now that he works for ESPN. But I guess that's probably not neither here nor there.
Luckily for me and you, we're good, right?
I was really worried about it for a while, but I think as now I've hit my almost 40s, I think I'm okay for now. Wow, that feels
Yeah.
really terrible to say out loud.
As long as that triangle doesn't, become more.
Yeah, I need a haircut.
I
Let's
forget
keep going.
the geometry. Anyway,
Obtuse,
back to this game.
obtuse. You should
Back to
know
this
that
game.
word.
Obtuse, isosceles. Um, Back to this game. Long Beach State is not intimidated by the name in front of jersey.
Also, Long Beach State plays. You know what their arena is called?
No.
The Pyramid. It's kind of like an isosceles, or it's a triangle of some sort. Keep going.
Yeah, Memphis, huh? Interesting.
No,
Um,
it's another one. Second.
Anyway, Long Beach State does not get intimidated by the name in front of the jersey. I like the Dan Munson story. I think it's a cool story. Arizona has dropped some unexpected ones this year. Oregon State, Stanford, Washington State at home. I don't know if you remember, they were actually a 2 seed last year,
I do
and they
remember.
lost. They lost to Princeton. So if Long Beach State is able to stay in this game, does Umar Balo start tightening up? Do those guys, that backcourt that was there last year, start tightening up? And then Caleb Love says, hey, it's Caleb Love time. I'll save this team and start taking terrible quality shots. I like Long Beach State. I'm going to 20.5, I think.
Yep.
Give me Long Beach
20,
State.
yeah. Yeah, it's a weird thing for everyone with a surname Love that just wants to rip their shirt off Superman style. Because I remember Kevin Love doing it at 300 pounds or whatever he was at UCLA back in the day. I'm gonna go with Arizona 20.5 point favorite. I do feel like they remember losing to Princeton last year, and I expect that they will take this matchup very, very seriously. And I don't think that ends well for Long Beach State, considering they're a gigantic underdog to even UC Irvine. Good team that probably will potentially knock off Utah in the NIT. Are we doing an NIT podcast tomorrow
I
night?
love that line. UC Irvine +7.
There you go. Just a nice little extra tip if you're considering some other tournaments, which I guess some teams have decided they didn't want to do because they'd rather be in the portal. But we'll move on to I guess, a little macro talk because we got a few minutes left in this episode, and then we'll give you best bets, get out of here. In terms of who you say, it's a tough call. As of Monday evening on March 18th, who do you have winning the Western region?
It's so hard, dude. This is the hardest region to pick. I mean, I'll go with North Carolina, but I don't have a ton of confidence in it. Like, I don't have a ton of confidence. Like, Michigan State in the 1 versus 9 game, that's hard. Yeah, you know what? I actually have a lot of confidence. If they get through that second round, they're good. They're golden. North Carolina, book it.
They get through Michigan State, which is in Charlotte. You're welcome, Davis Rand. Luckiest
Yeah.
draw possible. 1 seed they don't deserve, and then get to play in their backyard, which somehow is allowed. I think an hour and a half or so away from the Triangle. I think anywhere from 2 through 7 can win this region. Wouldn't be shocked. Which does show you, I guess, a little bit of interest that I have in Dayton. But I'm going to go with the Arizona Wildcats. I feel like if they get through Dayton, they'll be playing in Los Angeles, and they will have an entire crowd full, though UNC certainly does travel well. As for a best bet in this first round, what do you got for this episode at Big East, Ben?
January, February Izzo. Give me Michigan State Spartans.
Interesting. A Michigan State Spartans, a 1 point favorite, as we mentioned earlier on this episode. So I guess it's time to do it. So this is the real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, and on Twitter. This is the Need for Seeds College Basketball Podcast presented by the Bet and Pitch Podcast Network. You just heard at Big East Ben. He gave his best bet from the West region, Michigan State, in their month of Izzo, a 1 point favorite against the Mississippi State Bulldogs. And of course, my phone just ran out of space. So I guess we're not doing a reel on this one. But actually, let's go back up phone. We still have 1:23. So let's start that one more time. Sorry if you're listening on any sort of platform that doesn't allow me to redo this, but let's go and see if I can make this work. So this is the real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, and Twitter. You just heard at Big East Ben, and I might have repeated it twice. He took the Michigan State, a 1 point favorite against the Mississippi State Bulldogs, this Western region as his best bet. For my best bet in the same region, I'm going to go with another similarly closely spreaded game. I'm going to go with those Dayton Flyers, a 1.5 point underdog against Nevada in Salt Lake City, Utah. I think it's going to be a very close matchup potentially in both of them, but I think Dayton has the best player on the floor. Ben already mentioned that Mississippi State has a lot of problems. They're going to force you to go inside where they're a little porous defense will have a lot of trouble. I also think Mississippi State's free throw shooting is going to be a big, big problem as it has been a lot of times this year. Stick with us. The Need for Seeds College Basketball Podcast will be coming out with other regionals on Tuesday and Wednesday nights. Get you ready, get your brackets all in. So go grab Mississippi State, fade Mississippi State, grab Michigan State, a 1 point favorite, and grab Dayton, a 1.5 point underdog. And that'll do it for this episode. Thank you for all tuning in. I think we're about to get kicked off, but it was nice seeing you all. And we got the salute back tonight.